Welcome back to the Money Healing Club podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Duncan, financial therapist, art therapist, and founder of the Money Healing Club. It's a place for financial therapy experiences, from membership to group classes, individual work, and courses, all to become better friends with your money from the inside out. Reminder that this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It does not replace mental health care or financial advice. Okay, have you thought to yourself, if only I had more money? It's a really common silent wish that many of us are thinking, and it's a fair one to want more money. But what does more mean to you? Like, what exact number? Where does that amount come from? And will you ever be satisfied? In today's episode, I take a step back and reverse engineer what it means to have enough with the one and only Becky Mollenkamp. Becky is a feminist business coach, writer, and speaker who helps service-based entrepreneurs build human-first businesses that honor collective flourishing over profit-at-all-costs growth. She's also the author of Liberate Your Business, which just hit the shelves. It really challenges a lot of the narratives we've been taught about success, productivity, and worth. Even though the book is written for business owners, I think a lot of the principles apply pretty universally. If that's not enough, Becky also is the founder and community hub of the Feminist Podcasters Collective, which you know this podcast is a part of, and that's how we know each other. So when we think about liberation, there's no neat 4-step plan to liberate your business or your relationship with money. But in this conversation, Becky and I kind of find ourselves building a roadmap on the fly anyway, and wonder what you think about it. We talk a lot about what she calls the, quote, 6-figure lie. That feeling of, oh, if I just get there, if I just cross that number, then everything will feel okay. And why that goalpost keeps moving, and even the idea of it is kind of problematic. We explore enoughness, the systems we're all swimming in, and what it actually looks to start defining your relationship with money on your own terms and collectively at the same time. So let's talk about what we don't usually say when we talk about liberation and money with Becky Mollenkamp. Welcome to the Money Healing Club podcast, Becky Mollenkamp. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Rachel.
So we are going to focus today's conversation, well, on everything you do, which you have poured into your amazing book called Liberate Your Business. And I actually want to zoom into the middle of the book, chapter 6, where you really start talking about money. And you talk about the, quote, 6-figure lie. The 6-figure lie, which is really turning a narrative on its head. Tell us, what is the 6-figure lie, Becky?
It is the lie that capitalism teaches us that there is some magical number that's going to solve all of our problems, that's going to make everything all better. And if we just strive and work hard and keep going until we hit that magical number, then once we get there, like poof, all the problems go away and we will have succeeded. We will have done it and we will be happy.
Bootstrapping, the bootstrap lie. Yes. I think it's also interesting about 6 figures as such an anchor point. Like, I feel like it's been 6 figures since the 90s. Like, it's not even, it's an arbitrary number that just happens to be round in US dollars and doesn't even like reflect cost of living changes. Like it is this magical thing that feels like this threshold that also is just really arbitrary.
Well, exactly. It is arbitrary. Although interesting, I think we're starting to see more and more rhetoric of people moving it to the 7-figure lie, which is even more pressure and more scary, right? But it is completely arbitrary. And that's kind of the point, because it isn't based on any reality of any one person's lived experience, their needs, their desires, what they actually want and need for their life. It is just a number that feels big enough to maybe be real, but also like big enough that for a lot of us, we'll never hit it. So we're always going to be striving, which is why I think more and more we're starting to see the 7-figure thing show up, because it has to be big enough that most of us don't reach it, so that we're always hamsters in the wheel,
right?
churning. You
talk about like the hedonic treadmill, right? We're on it and it's always like, oh, if I just get to there, like that's going to be all different.
Yeah. That's what we think a lot of us discover. We get to the 6-figure lie and then we realize, well, that didn't do it. Darn it. What I thought that was going to be the thing. So then the goalpost moves to the 7-figure, which is why I think we're seeing more of that, because people have hit the 6-figure and realized that didn't solve all my problems.
Right.
I'm not magically suddenly happy. So I guess maybe really the number should have been 7 figures. I even see some people talking about 8 figures. Right. So I think if anything, that should tell us that's why we know it's a lie, because it always moves. It's never going to be enough.
And you know what I'd say? I think the other side that I see with my work as a financial therapist, not always working with business owners sometimes, but more just, I don't know, anybody, is also like, well, I just have to spend less. Spending less is the answer. Spending less is the answer, which is kind of the other side of the coin.
Right.
And it's like, okay, from both of these, the making more and spending less, we're taking a systemic issue and making it personal. And really, we need to back up and be like, what is your relationship to the money?
Yes. And what is money's relationship to you, meaning the system of money? Mm-hmm. What is its relationship with how you show up in the world, your identity? Because so much of that is also outside of our control. There are things that are in our control. Mm-hmm. And those things are important to look at. Sure, spending is one of many levers that we do have some agency over. But I think the part that gets missed so often is the parts that we don't have a lot of direct agency over affecting. And money is a systemic issue. Yeah. It is a very big, one of the biggest systemic issues. And every person's relationship with that is different based on identity. The starting line that you have with money, the kind of relationship you're going to probably be able to have with money is going to be different based on a whole bunch of factors that were set up before you were born.
You mentioned a couple times in the book, like, first off, I just love you have a chapter with a topic, do like a wonderful essay about it, and then have like, here's the challenge, or here's like some actual tools. It's not just you talking, which is, by the way, just a thing I really love about the book. And you talk about enoughness. There's a whole kind of section of enoughness. Do you want to kind of break down like how you approach like guiding? And also, I don't think this is just for business owners. I think this is good for everybody.
Absolutely.
Could you guide us through like the stages of enoughness and how we look at that?
Yeah, I mean, my focus is business owners only because that's the lane I'm in. But most of what's in the book, although written to business owners, so much of it goes to all of us because it's talking about all sorts of things that we all care about, imposter syndrome and, all the issues. But with money, the key to getting off that hedonic treadmill, the hedonic treadmill is just the psychological concept that there's never going to be enough. The goalpost continues to move, and it's set up that way by capitalism because capitalism needs us to be good consumers, constant consumers, because that's what keeps the rich getting richer, right? It's what keeps money getting put into the system is that we are constantly consuming and taking from the system, and that it never gets us satisfied so that we buy more. Getting off of that treadmill requires some really complicated and challenging work for us around what's enough. Capitalism teaches us enough. That word becomes almost an ugly word. Mm. It starts to feel like settling or something bad, like I'm just accepting less than.
Good enough.
When enough in and of itself means enough, right? Like the very word means it's plenty. It is enough. But it's been so warped by capitalism that we think of enough as being less than, not enough, right? No, I can't just be okay with enough. I need more, more, more. So some of it is just starting to like sit with that discomfort of what is your relationship with the idea of enough, of enoughness? What does it mean to you? What have you been taught about enough?
Like, I think about, our feelings of fullness, like with food, right?
Yep.
And so often I don't work with food directly, but it comes up a lot, in session and you're used to literally consuming a certain amount. And sometimes when we work with our relationship with food, it's actually keying into that feeling of enough because we've been taught not to pay attention to it, right?
Exactly.
What are our cues for feeling full and sated? And yeah, I almost feel like maybe we could replace enough with like, I don't know, satisfaction or satiation
satisfied
or something.
Yeah,
there's a lot of different ways to describe that.
Yeah. But even still, until you examine that relationship and begin to really fundamentally shift your relationship with the concept, it won't matter what word you substitute. Yeah. Because capitalism, the waters that we're swimming in, the air that we constantly breathe is continually reinforcing the idea that enough or satiation or satisfaction. None of those things are good enough, right? There's always something better just over the horizon. You've just got to get to that thing, and that's going to be the thing. We have to really shift our relationship with that concept as a whole. And that's really, really hard work, right? So it's really sitting down, I think, and I'll be interested to hear because you work with people at a more granular level, probably around money than I do. But one of the things that I will often tell my business coaching clients is I want you to sit down with a spreadsheet or whatever form you like to work in and actually calculate, what is your dream life, your so-called dream life, this thing that you think is in the horizon, what is it really going to cost? I want you to sit down and line item every part of that life. If you tell me the only way you're really going to be happy in life is to have a personal chef, I don't think most of us need that, but if that's what then what does that cost? Yeah. What is the actual dollar amount? I want you to get down to the penny. What is it actually going to cost you? Because we are never challenged to do that, because if we actually start to look what the actual number is, we have a stopping point.
Yeah.
Capitalism doesn't want us to have a stopping point. So most of us have never figured out what is our actual stopping point. That's sure enough. What I find is once we start to do that work, that enough number actually often downshifts a lot. It is because we start to that process of just even starting to identify what does it actually cost? What is it? How do I define what satisfaction, satiation, enough? How do I define that in my life? And then what are the actual numbers for that? That process already is starting to click you out of sort of the haze that we are all in that is just telling us always more. So then once we started to click out of that, we often find that we realize, you know what? I don't even know why I thought I needed a personal chef. Like, who do I like? Why? I actually enjoy cooking or whatever the things are for you. And you actually start to, usually your enough number goes down. For most people, it goes down from what they thought it needed to be, not the other way. Because once you start to move out of that system, you realize that's not going to be the thing that lights me up. That's not going to be the thing that's going to make me feel full and satiated, right? Because it's the same, like you said, with eating. And, I have had my issues around that too, where it's just like you're trying to fill a hole with something that was never going to fill the hole, right? And money's the same thing. And starting to question what actually fills that hole for me. What is it that actually makes me feel satiated in my life? And that is not to say, I think because people often think with enoughness, again, they're thinking of it as I'm settling, it's less than, it's not a full, beautiful, amazing life. It is not to say that you can't make money or you shouldn't make money, that you shouldn't have a really full and rewarding and enriching and amazing life, that you shouldn't desire to have things. That's not at all what I'm saying, right? Because I think life is beautiful and full when we have things, and things can also make life easier, and more enjoyable. Money can make life easier and more enjoyable. I am not here to tell you it doesn't buy happiness. It can to a degree, right? But it's the piece around actually questioning how much of this is what I, as Becky or whoever you are, me as an individual, how much of this is my actual desire versus just the air I've been breathing, what I've been told it's supposed to look like. Yeah. I don't actually want Kim Kardashian's life. I wouldn't want that. No slight on Kim Kardashian. It's just it wouldn't be the thing that would fulfill me. So why am I trying to make Kim Kardashian money? What's the point of it, right? Like, I think we need to sit down and really investigate that for ourselves.
Yeah, I love this idea of like zooming out and like, where am I learning this? Where did I get these ideas from? It's the system. Like, I'm going to balance my individual desires also with like, what is systemic in this? And lifestyle. Oh man, we're so cued by lifestyle. I think of like, even, I'm a child of the 80s, and, only the very wealthy had house cleaners in my growing up. And now it's commonplace for quite a few more people. It's been this lifestyle creep. And so, and that's, I think lifestyle creep is also like a normal thing. It's a phenomenon that happens to a lot of people. And to really, really look at, well, where did I learn that needs to be there? Or another kind of like paradigm shift I like to think about is like, what would I keep doing no matter how much money I had? I don't think I'll ever stop thrifting. Because I love it. It's such a more fun shopping, but like, it's so much more me. And so that can be kind of a fun thing. Like, I really do enjoy cooking, or I really do enjoy just like casual lunches with friends. Like, those things are super important to you now, will continue to be important. And to like center your vision around those values that you're already living, because those things will probably stick around.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying beautiful things. That is, for some people, beauty is a really core value. And one way they may express that is through curating really beautiful things in their life. And that is okay, right? It's not about judging what others have or don't have or what they desire or don't desire. It's getting down to, like you said, that root understanding of the desire. Where is it coming from? And is it even yours? There, for a long time, I was pursuing things that were not my desire. I was building this life that looked beautiful. I had a gorgeous home. I had a shiny red BMW in the garage. I was traveling all the time. Like, I lived a life that looked really great, and I was unhappy. And that was a really hard place to be, because I had to figure out why. Everyone else tells me I should be so happy because I'm doing great. I've got disposable income. I have all the nice things. I'm buying designer handbags and, all this stuff. But I began to realize designer handbags for me were never going to fill the hole. It wasn't something I actually valued or cared about. I sometimes do miss the BMW. It's a very fine piece of machinery. But on the whole, the things were not, like, for me, that wasn't it, right? For some people, it's travel, and they don't care what kind of home they're in, what kind of car they drive. Other people may not care about traveling, but they really care about personal expression in the form of really beautiful, fancy clothing. That's okay too, right? So that's exactly it. It is not about questioning someone's desires. It's about understanding where those desires are actually theirs. And I just wanted to quickly say, just because I thought it, on the home cleaning piece, yes, and lifestyle creep is definitely real. And I just want to throw in the note that the number of working women now versus when we were kids is very different.
Totally. Exactly.
And I love that we have house cleaners. And for people who can afford that, I mean, there's obvious privilege in that. And I think in a lot of what I talk about in the book is acknowledging the places of privilege and all of that. But I also think good, like, we as women should not. So it's also for me to just say, like, I'm not saying you have to cook. If you don't like cooking, don't cook. If you don't like cleaning, don't clean. I hate cleaning. Like, that's okay. Right. So it's okay to want those things. Yeah. Again, it comes back to, is it because it's solving a need for you, a desire for you, or because someone else somewhere along the way said this is what you're supposed to want? In the same way that, like, you shouldn't have to cook just because society says you're supposed to cook, right? No, that's crap. We don't need to do that either.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, and I think there's just shifts. I think that's just what I mean. Like, oh, these shifting things about, like, what is normal, what's a normal lifestyle, and all it usually takes is some international travel for you to realize, oh, my sense of quote normal is so specific and not
very much so.
World. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, and a big change too since the 80s is the wage gaps between CEOs and workers. So there may be more people with cleaners, but there's a whole lot more people who have far less than they did in the 80s. And then there's a small group of people who have a lot more than they did in the 80s. Thank you, Reaganomics. Yeah. So there are major shifts, and capitalism at that same time, while those rich are getting richer, they're trying to make the rest of us feel like we are supposed to be keeping up with the Joneses where we can't, right? And we're putting ourselves into credit card debt to do it. We are, we're overextending ourselves to try to keep up with the lifestyle that for many of us, if we really get honest with ourselves, isn't what we want anyway. Right. And that's the part I want to try to check us out.
That's the liberation part. And maybe we could like dig into that word a little bit. Like, how can we liberate from these constraints or from these things that end up, hurting us, hurting society? And, and I know that process of liberation is often an act of rebellion. Right.
Yeah.
And so could you talk to us, like, how do we liberate, like, from, like you said, liberate our business, liberate from money, like all of this stuff?
Yeah. Here's the hard part nobody likes to hear, and why writing a book from this lens is challenging, because there's no 3-step formula.
Oh,
everyone loves that. I know. Everyone loves, like, a really tidy, do these 3 steps and now you're liberated, right? Now capitalism no longer affects you. Here's the truth. It is literally the air we breathe. White supremacist capitalist patriarchy is the air that we all breathe, especially in Western cultures, and most especially here in the US. So you can do tons of work, and then the very next day you go out and breathe in the air and it's all coming back in. So it's a constant process, which sucks because people really just want to be like, 1, 2, 3, and I'm done. And now I've checked that box and I can move on. But that's actually capitalism speaking. Like, that's conditioning us to show up that way. And that's not how it works. But I would say, if you're looking for steps, number 1, far and away, is awareness. We can't change what we can't see. So if you still aren't seeing the air that you're breathing, if you're the fish who doesn't know he's in water yet, you're not going to be able to change anything until you can see the water, right? And that's an important part of the process. The most important part, I think, is the awareness. And that is like that's why there's a lot of journaling prompts in the book to try and help you start to dig into some of these questions. Because again, that piece of, is this even mine? Most of us, we're never encouraged to sit down and ask that question. We're not encouraged to ask, who told me I should want more? Who benefits when I want more? Do I actually want more? What is enough for me? These aren't questions that we are encouraged to ask, right? In fact, we're very much encouraged to ask the opposite of those questions.
Yeah,
and so that awareness is important.
Yeah, and I'm kind of balancing this with, what's so common is the under-earning. Like there is another side to this coin of under-earning and being committed to under-earning, which is also, especially for folks who are, and gendered female and things like that of like, even listening to you speak, it's like, I can see this play out in some ways, but in other ways, I've been almost afraid to pursue more money. And it's sort of this other side of the coin.
Yeah. I love that you're bringing that up because enough for people with privilege, generally, the question is not more, right? It's how do I right size, or not even right size, but just how do I manage these expectations in a way that they become my expectations and not what I've been given. But there are for many of us with marginalized identities, and certainly people have far more marginalized identities than I do. The challenge is, can I believe that I deserve enough, that I am able to, enough, because enough is not, again, I'm not saying it's settling. It's less. It's not enough. It's less. I am saying enough is enough. Yeah. What actually helps to finance the life that is what I want my life to look like? And for many people with far less privilege, that does mean challenging themselves to dream bigger, to think I can have more, and then to do the things that are involved in that, which can look like pricing things very differently, right? Because when we woefully underprice because we don't think that we are allowed to ask for more, that people will pay us more, that we deserve more, then we are stuck in this place of not enoughness. But not enoughness is just as problematic as too muchness, right? Both of those are the issue with capitalism, because what is that? That's the binary that capitalism tells us has to exist. Haves and have-nots. Our goal is to check out of the haves and have-nots system altogether, to say, no, we should all have. But to do that, we all have to have enough. It's not about having too much and too little, right? It's not about hoarding wealth. And it's not, because when we're on the side of privilege and we're hoarding, the only way we can do that is by others having to downsize what their lives look like. And I think we have to ask ourselves, is that the life I want to be a part of contributing to? The answer for me is no. And so that means that I have to really get honest with myself. Then what is enough for my family to have a lovely, wonderful life? That's it. Just a lovely, wonderful life. And a lovely, wonderful life does not have to look like owning a private island. It doesn't.
Let's not do that.
Right?
No more islands. Guys.
Because the only way you can own a private island is at the cost of stealing land, stealing labor, right? You're going to be taking from others. So I think it's really important. You're right. The people on the other side of that, those with more marginalized identities, the challenge is, it's still a challenge. And the challenge is to challenge yourself to say, what is enough for me? And am I able to foster belief that I can make that happen? And also, we have to acknowledge there are real systemic barriers. Again, going back to your relationship with money, our relationship with money is vastly different based on what the system, I hate to say allows at the moment, right? The way the system is structured, there are many people for whom their relationship with money can't look the way they want it to yet. And that's a real problem, which is why those with privilege need to really examine their relationship with money.
Because then it gets into, manifest abundance and you think big and shoot for your dreams, which actually is still just individualism talking again. And
which is why we have to get to the part of the politics of money, which is we have to vote in a way that actually reflects our values. And this is what we see. This is the problem with the system we're in, because when you begin to concentrate and hoard wealth, it begins to protect itself, right? So you can show up saying you care about people, but then we see the number of people who vote to harm others because in order to protect themselves. So it's about not only just voting that way, it's also about showing up, about writing to your politicians. But also it looks like for people with privilege, it looks like thinking really long and hard about when you do have surplus, when you do have abundance, when you do have more than you need, when you've gone beyond enough, what are you doing with that? What it often looks like is we're stacking it away, saying, I want my people, my family, my lineage to benefit. And is that aligned with your values? Or does it look like funding mutual aid? Does it look like saying, I'm going to give this money to organizations that are doing work with the populations that are having all of these systems stacked against them so they can't get to the place of having enough, or let alone excess?
And also, look what you're paying your team. Are you paying your team enough to save for retirement? As I grow my business, that's been a big thing for me is paying people not a living wage, but a thriving one.
Yes.
And, and everybody benefits from that. So
absolutely. It's very important to think about. And for us to be demanding that of corporations, we can be doing that on an individual level. And again, individual stuff is really important. And it is a piece of the puzzle where we have some agency. But the way we have agency in the parts where we feel like we have less agency is through demanding, right? And so for those who are not self-employed, it is like thinking about unionizing. It is about talking about collective action. If there's going to be a general strike, participating in that strike. Sometimes we have to put some skin in the game. We have to have some risk to be able to make the kinds of change that really need to happen for everyone to have access to enough.
And I think that step into maybe discomfort or taking a stand, I do think it could be part of if we were to have 3 easy steps or 3 clear steps, is to lean into some discomfort and find the people who are doing this, to challenge anything. We have to kind of cultivate our inner rebel a bit and question things, step out of our comfort zone a little bit, do that stretch. That is how any important change has happened.
Yeah. So we'll say 3 steps are: first, awareness. First is just doing the work to start to question the systems that you exist in and where they are affecting you, benefiting you, harming you, where you're participating, where you have power to maybe step out of that. And then I would say the next piece is then defining for yourself what is enough, being really honest and doing a real good gut check on that. What does enough look like in your life? And then I love that piece about the third step being some discomfort, because for those with privilege, there's going to be discomfort in saying, I'm going to use I'm going to use the excess in ways that don't just benefit me. That's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable inside of a system that has trained you not to think that way. And so we have to honor that in ourselves, that is going to be really hard and really uncomfortable. But also, is that how I want to show up? And then for those who have less privilege, who have more marginalized identities, it's going to be really uncomfortable to do things like charging more money, asking for a raise, saying no to somebody who's undervaluing you, all of these things, right? Those are uncomfortable. And then for all of us, it's really uncomfortable to demand better from those who have more, right? And that is also, and those who have more power to make change. So there is so much discomfort in this, and that's such an important part of it.
Step 4, find the people who are doing it too. So you're not doing it alone.
Yeah.
I think we get so much exhaustion that, it's this individualism. I have to do it myself, or I have to reinvent the wheel, when there are likely people, organizations who have noticed this problem too, join the wave, and we don't have to burden all of these things on our own when we can share with others and knowing you and being part of the Feminist Podcasters Collective. There are these ways to feel, I'm part of things. And that really, when we can share that, mental load, emotional load, nervous system load, it's so much easier.
Well, it's also part of shifting our thinking to enoughness.
Collective.
Because it's exactly, again, going back to, can I have enough and then have a whole bunch more and say, well, my enough's met and now I have all this extra? Sure. But there's a cost to that. And it's a collective cost that leaves others without enough. And we have to, Americans in particular, and you may have, and probably North Americans as a whole, and most Western cultures, but I think America is particularly guilty of this because of this concept of the American dream and the bootstrapping and all of that. We are deeply ingrained into an individualistic way of showing up in life, right? It is all about every man for themselves. Everybody figure it out. No asking for help. You got to figure this out. You got to do it on your own. The self-made millionaire, all of these, there's so much mythology around individualism in our culture. And that teaches us to not think collectively. There are cultures, by the way, that think collectively. I mean, often Americans will look at Europe and be like, I want universal health care. Yes. Then they find out how much the taxes are and they say, oh no, that's ridiculous. There's a cost to collective care, but there's also such a deep and rich and beautiful reward, which is not just the individual reward. It's the collective reward. It's knowing that you are helping your neighbor. You are helping the stranger. You are helping all people live a better life.
And it's not all altruism. I know that when the schools are better, I know that when houselessness is addressed, it does improve my life. Like, it's not all altruistic. It's not null sum that like, my extra payment there benefits all. Actually, I just had a conversation with my husband. Well, in the fall, there was a big ballot measure here in Denver, a big bond, huge bond for replacing a lot of the libraries and parks, right? Just like old stuff from the 70s that needs to get redone. And it's a lot, right? It is. It's kind of like this unfathomable amount of money. And it's like, well, if it's not in my neighborhood, what does it matter? Oh, hang on. Right. This benefits our entire city, which is like the big sort of beast that we live in. And the ripple effect, I don't know how you want to call it, is very real. When there are resources for the people around us, it actually will come back to us. As, you know,
Absolutely.
I don't know, what do you want to say? Reduce crime, increase education levels, right? All of this stuff. It's a subtle.
It's down to I was just having this conversation with somebody else too. It goes down to like, you hear people complain about the service that they receive. Somebody was talking to me the other day about how the cashier couldn't count change for them or something. And those same people will often be the people who turn around and say, well, I'm not going to vote for a bond for the schools. I don't even have kids in the schools. And it's like, you may not have kids in schools, but then you're going to complain about the person who doesn't know how to count the change because the school system is failing them, because you don't want to help fund it. Yes, it all matters. It all matters. And I think sometimes in the world we live in, it can be very overwhelming. Like, I have those moments of just, it's all so big and so overwhelming. And we just have to remember to zoom down to the local level. What can you do locally? In the case of like, and this is online, but it's still my local community, the Podcast Collective. It's not thousands of people, but there's 50 lives, 50 people who are all supporting each other and helping each other. And that's one small micro way that I can have some influence in my community. I go to the PTO meetings, and does that change the world? No, but it does, right? When we think about the butterfly wings, like these ripple effects, like you said, they go out. So when it starts to feel overwhelming, look smaller, get myopic. What can I do in my community? And that's part of this like wealth piece too. It's like, when I have enough, and by enough, by the way, we're talking money, but I also want to be clear. I'm also talking about time, because that's a really important resource as well. Do I have enough time? Because we often get so fixated on enough money that it comes at the cost of enough time for rest, for family, for things that bring us joy, for making a difference in our community. So when we look at enough, we need to look at enough of all the things that we want, not just our money. The money can help fund those, but sometimes it actually can take away from those. So finding that balance. And so if I have enough money and I have a surplus of time, I can use that to go out and make a difference in the community in ways that then help to support that enoughness. So sometimes I may not have an abundance of money, but I might have abundance of time. And how am I paying that forward? So I think this idea of enough, it's like in all parts of our life. You mentioned food. I would mention time. I think we can look at any part of our life and just really ask ourselves, do I have enough? Yeah. Because also when we think about climate change and what we're putting into the trash, do I have enough stuff? Look around, like, do I need that third handbag or whatever the thing is I'll probably end up throwing away or putting to Goodwill? So I just want to make enough feel like a beautiful gift and not a like straitjacket that's like, oh, it's making me feel smaller.
Like a real stabilizing feeling. And I love this aspect of reverse engineering. Like in the club, I have this spreadsheet where you plug in your numbers, and it's actually like, then this is maybe the income you should shoot for. So it's this more reverse engineer. And it's a specific number when you account for debt payoff, your bills, your got to haves, your love to haves, whatever. I hate the whole like dichotomy of needs versus wants. I don't talk about that. But like when we build this up and saving for retirement, like this is more the number, at your next employment review or whatever to look, and it'd be a lot more specific than like, it has to be 6 figures or whatever, and it could be more. And then now we have a specific thing to aim for. And that like kind of reverse engineering is very helpful.
Well, in the part where you're talking about people who maybe are on that other side of not enough, right? Having a specific number and understanding the why of that number. And I just think that's so important. Like, cause when you just stick, I need to make 6 figures. That could be 100,000 or 999,000, which is a very big field, right? But even if you just choose 100,000, I've got to make $100,000 this year. But if you don't know why what that's actually doing in your life, it becomes much easier when someone starts to debate you on your pricing or your boss starts to push back on a raise for you to give in. Because it's like, oh, well, sure, that sounds good too. I'll take that. Like 70,000. Sure. Okay. That sounds really nice. It's a 5% raise, whatever. But when you know why, like, no, this is what's going to actually allow me to retire at the age I wanted to, or going to make sure that my kids get to go to school or whatever the things are, it becomes far more motivating and more difficult for you to say yes when you really want to say no, right? You have a reason to show up and charge a certain amount of money or demand a certain raise. That's so important and so missing for most people because they're just pulling stuff out of the dark. And when you do that, it lacks that gravitas that you need to be able to really stand up for yourself. And we as people with marginalized identities, most especially, need that. Mm-hmm. They need to know, like, no, this is why. So when you start pushing back on me and say, no, you should be making less, and I can say, no, I shouldn't. And I know why I shouldn't.
Afford that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And there's this beautiful number. And actually, maybe this is like this point of enoughness. So like to really, accelerate wealth building, let's say, like I said, like, lifestyle creep, lifestyle inflation is very normal and natural. But like when we know what that enough is, what I hope for everyone is then you make more than that enough point. That gap is powerful when we can uncouple our income from our expenses. And there is a number where that will happen, but we got to be aware of that because it will just track. Expenses will just track your income if we don't know that point. So that's the other, I think, really interesting tipping point for folks is like, that's my enoughness. Any amount over that, then now also I have a plan for, right? Now we're talking, philanthropic or whatever it is, right? And that is where like more lasting wealth can exist, is in that gap. And of course, like your enoughness might be there, right? This is all subjective, but I think that's also really important because I want everyone to I do want everyone to make more money, but also know what to do with that when there's that surplus or abundance.
I want everyone except for Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk to make more money. Well, all the billionaires.
And I mean everyone I know.
Yeah. That gap you're talking about, that the surplus, because once we hit our enough, you may have years where you do have big surplus. There may be years where it's a smaller surplus. That surplus, I love the idea of having a plan for it. And that, I don't want to shame surplus. It is about what are you thinking about with that surplus? And that's where I challenge people to think collectively. Too often, the people who are thinking collectively are people who don't even have a surplus. So they're giving away from before they've even hit their enough. And now they never hit their enough because they're giving away before they even get to their enough. It's like the oxygen mask on the airplane. That's so trite, but it's there for a reason, right? We have to take care of ourselves first. I say we're individualistic, but there is survival has to be in place. So you have to hit your, like, what is my enough to survive, which may be different than your enough to thrive, right? But you have to at least hit the enough survive before you start thinking about giving away excess. So when I talk about collective action, I'm not talking for those people who haven't hit enough, who are always struggling and can't get to enough, whose survival is not even covered yet. You don't need to be thinking about collective action. You need to get yourself to that place where you are able to survive. You have your oxygen mask on. Then that excess that you're talking about, that's where I would challenge people to start to think about, what does collective action look like? What does it look like to use this excess in a way that funds or helps all of us? Some of that might be helping your family and the people you care about, especially when you have marginalized identity and so the people in your world, right? But it can also look like, how do I use some of that excess to fund things like mutual aid or philanthropic endeavors of organizations that are doing good work in this world, right? So yeah, I do think it's important, as you said, like up to that enough. Because I think that's what we see too often is the folks who have the most marginalized identities. And there's, I think, stats to prove this, tend to be the most generous.
Yeah, and tend to maybe sometimes give more than they can really afford. And I love the spirit, but like, okay, there is a bit of, the tending to yourself, and that you can be generous and contribute in so many ways. There's time. There's also like connections, like there's care, compassion, like there's so many resources we have, network, all of that. You have a section on network, don't you?
Well, yeah, network, because the phrase, your network is your net worth. it really upsets me because it's such a privileged statement. And yes, it is. It's a way of perpetuating, of passing privilege and keeping privilege within a certain identity, because that's what it ends up looking like. And I want to challenge people. I think our network is a valuable resource. And I'm not saying network is bad. It is when the network ends up being something that perpetuates itself. So it all looks the same. And we're just passing the benefit, the privilege from one privileged person to another.
Or maybe the question is, who is in your network?
Exactly. It's challenging you to examine your network, who's in that. How do you help others benefit by bringing people in that are not normally included in that network? How do we start to introduce those voices into the space? I mean, that's kind of the challenge through so much of what's in the book, is to think beyond our own privilege and how, for those with privilege and those, there's also plenty in the book for those who have less privilege, who do have more marginalized identities, on being able to, I think so much of that then is honoring that for yourself, because what often ends up happening is there's shame that comes up. Why can't I figure this out? Why am I not being invited into the rooms? What am I doing wrong? When it's so much of it is like having love and compassion for yourself to recognize you are not doing it wrong. The system is wrong. The system is what's broken, not you.
Right. And if you are in a place of having some agency there, really thinking about who is not in your room, and, considering broadening that. It actually reminds me, have you seen, I think it's on Netflix, the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary series? Have you seen that?
No, I have not.
I know, it just seems like out of nowhere.
I'm very interested on what it's about, because
I mean, I do think he's a really interesting person. Like, agree or not agree. But one thing that's actually remarkable about him is he talks about all the people who helped him. He really does not talk about, like, it's not I did it myself. It's I happened to be in the right place at the right time. I can't believe that person connected me to that person. And it was such a surprising facet of his story. And it's kind of like in these three phases, like his bodybuilder phase, his acting phase, and his political phase. And but he really, really talks about that he's he's a social butterfly, and that it was about happenstance. It was about his gratitude for the people around him. Say what you will about him. I found it a very surprising aspect of his story, and maybe also comes from his more European roots.
That's what I was going to say. I have a feeling the fact that he's not American helps him, because European roots, they tend to be a little more collectivist in their thinking than we are. Because there's this whole self-made notion that we have. No one is self-made.
Nobody.
You're not, right? And the network is a piece of that, right? For sure. And access is so important. And part of that's access to financial education, access to being in rooms, access to people who are going to hire, and to the hiring process, even being invited in for an interview. I mean, there's plenty of evidence too around what names are less likely to even get an interview on, when that name shows up on a resume, and the racist roots in that. So that's such an important part of this that gets overlooked too. And money is, again, one really important and powerful piece of liberation. It's not the only part. And that may be, for many people, money may not be the place where they can start to see the liberation process first, because they may not have much or access. But there are other places where we can start to do that. Like, maybe for you, time is the place that you do that. Maybe it is your network where you start to do the liberation process. There's different entry points into everyone's liberation journey, can look different. And it's thinking about each of those parts of our lives. And again, going back to first starting with awareness. So if you're talking about networking, awareness looks like, who is in the room? Who isn't in the room? What's keeping people from those people who aren't here? What's making them perhaps not feel comfortable to be in the room? What's making me think I can't invite them into the room, right? Who benefits by them not being in the room? I always love that question. Who benefits from this and who doesn't? From something that's, bigger thing, also down to just ourselves. Who benefits from me feeling this way? Who benefits from me thinking this way? Those are really good questions for us on that, awareness piece before we even get into making change.
Well, I think that's actually a beautiful note I think this is the most perfect soundbite to kind of wrap up, I think, what so much of your book is about. And I know there's also a lot that we didn't cover. I'm so glad we could hone in on just the money piece, but I know you've got chapters on all sorts of other stuff. Becky, tell us, how can people get their hands on this beautiful book?
BeckyMollenkamp.com/book, or as of April 30th, it'll be available on Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, most of the places. Or you can go to your library and ask them to get it in, ebook or print book. I don't have the audio book because, as you mentioned, it's not I don't love, for nonfiction, I don't love long form narrative personally. I like books, business books especially, that kind of just give me stuff to do. And this book has a lot of that. It's a lot of like, here's what to do. Here's an exercise. Here's a tool you can use.
Yeah. It feels more like a workbook in so many ways. I really hope people get their hands on it, even whether or not you're in business. I think it will really shake up when we feel like limited or constrained or hopeless. I feel like your book gives hope, and it's not empty hope. It's like, really, here's some different ways of thinking and different practices and things to do, which I so appreciated. Or give it as the perfect gift for the entrepreneur in your life.
Well, thank you. Yes. And I do want to just quickly say thank you to all of the amazing Black and Brown Indigenous folks from whom I drew knowledge and who have been incredible educators to me over time, even though most of them don't know my name, that helped me to write what's in this book. So it's not, I don't want to even begin to tell people it's my genius. It's genius that I have distilled from, legacies of genius.
Yeah. Your references are gold in themselves, for sure.
Yeah. I think if you want just a really great reading list, go check the reference list in the book, because it's spot on.
Yeah. So good. All right. So Becky, I'd love to ask you the question I ask all my guests, which is, you can just give me your first instinctive answer. Take a breath. If you were to imagine your money as a creature, what's the first thing that pops to mind?
I really feel like this is the creature that just speaks to all parts of my life in so many ways that it sounds horrible, but a sloth, because it's slow, but it's really intentional. A sloth moves with the greatest of intention. If you ever see them move, they do move incredibly slow, but it's because they're being really thoughtful about what they want to do and how they want to expend their energy, what's worth expending energy. And I feel like with money, that's kind of where I'm at. It's like it sometimes feels slow coming in. It feels like slow growth with my own process of trying to get to my enoughness or surpass my enoughness and then use that. But it's because it's intentional. And I love that relationship that I have with money now, where in the past it felt hurried and scary and volatile. And now it feels more like it moves like a really thoughtful sloth. And I appreciate the sloth. I love the sloth.
And they're so darn cute.
So come on.
Endearing.
It's my dream to someday get to pet a sloth.
And my hope for you is that your money grows so beautifully and intentionally that it even grows moss on its back, right? Because that's
I would love that.
Do.
I want my money to be the tree that the sloth is on, and the sloth.
The really hooked toes.
I know, aren't they the cutest? I love sloths. I just feel like they get a bad rap, but they're the best.
And they look like they're smiling. No, they're probably not.
I doubt it.
Becky, thank you so much for sharing about your beautiful sloth energy. I love that. And for your amazing book. And I would have just loved being connected to you. And also, can we just plug the Feminist Podcasters Collective?
Please.
Because there are, if anyone needs to freshen up their podcast list, check out all the amazing creators that you have brought together and support in the collective.
Go to feministpods.com and you can check us out. There's a member list there with all of our cool shows. We have, I don't know, I'm a little biased, but I think we're pretty awesome.
It's a rad list. And really everything. It's not all political or deep thought, right?
It's not all business. It's not, we have just the most amazing mix. We have people who are talking about movies and smutty books.
Yes,
everything.
Favorite. I know. It's a really good list. So thank you for bringing us all together. And
thank you for being part of it. And thank you for your show and for all that you do.
Thank you.
The love fest.
It's just a love fest. I'll give you that. Thank you, Becky, so much.
Thanks, Rachel.
That's the Money Healing Club podcast, everyone. And now a little honest money moment, because, hey, that is what I do here. I want you to know that it costs about $400 to produce each episode. And right now that is funded through my other financial therapy work. So my ask is this: if this show has helped you feel even a little less ashamed, less alone, more grounded in your money story, I'd love for you to support it financially. Go on over to moneyhealingclub.com/podcast and you'll see the button to contribute to the show. Think of it as helping keep this a soft place to land that's open to everyone. We are also always looking for new listener questions and stories to feature on an upcoming episode. So you can go to that same page, moneyhealingclub.com/podcast, go to the big orange button where you can record your story, your question, right from your phone or browser. And if you're craving more support, there's lots of other financial therapy goodness happening at moneyhealingclub.com, from group programs to courses to working one-on-one with me. You don't have to do this alone. Production support for the podcast by Sydney Harbosky at sydneyharbosky.com. We are also a proud member of the Feminist Podcasters Collective, where creators like me are building podcasts to make a better world together. I will see you next time.